This is the Venturing Angler Podcast. I'm Tim Harden. In this episode, we're talking about the Mission Magazine and more with Tudor Caradoc-Davies. Let's chat with Tudor. All right, we're here with Tudor from the Mission Magazine. How are you, Tudor?
Very well, thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me.
So we met years ago at a trade show, and I remember feeling like the Mission had come out of nowhere and was already so good and so established. And ever since then, the Mission always comes up as a favorite for folks. I'd love to hear the background, because I feel like, we're at issue number 40 now, but you guys came out swinging, and it originally appeared to be a regional magazine, and now it's a bit more global, and it's a favorite. Where did this come from? And I don't even know where to start, because it's one of my favorites. And so, what's the background and history of? Well, let's start with you. I have to ask about the Mission, but what's your background, as an angler, and then someone who made his way to a magazine?
Sure, no problem. Look, there's a lot to unpack there. First off, thanks for the flattery, and to hear that we're favorites of some people out there. That's good to know. I'm trying to remember. Did we first meet? Was it Orlando ICAST? Is that where we were?
Yeah, I think so. And you gave me a hard copy or two of the magazine, and
Yeah, I was sort of smuggling them around in my backpack, and like you said, we probably did seem like we came out of nowhere, and I think that applied in South Africa as well, because there were a couple of established magazines here, and okay, well, let me give you the genesis story of the magazine first. That's probably the easiest thing.
Okay.
So there's myself. My background in magazines, I used to work for GQ and Men's Health and Best Life magazine, which was the older version of Men's Health. So I kind of had a mainstream magazine background. I also worked for, English language newspapers in places like Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, but that's another story. And then our art director, Brendan Boddy, he came from Session Skateboarding magazine, which he started 20 odd years ago. And he also started a hipster magazine called The Lake, with, lots of sort of arty-farty photos and serious looking people with eyeshadow. And then our third partner is Conrad Boertes, who it's quite funny. In fly fishing circles, he's known as the sort of tarpon on foot guy, and he catches big cob. Just trying to think of the other names for it. I think mulloway. Do you call it mulloway on your side of the Atlantic?
I'm afraid to admit I haven't heard that.
Okay, so the other name for it is, and I'm not sure if this is PC or not, is jewfish, but that just sounds weird. So,
I have heard
anyway,
that. Yeah, it does sound weird to say.
Okay, well, yeah. Well, anyway, there you go. So Conrad is kind of known for those things in fly fishing circles, but he's actually much better known for his art. He's quite a big South African artist, so it's quite weird. The art crowd have no idea that he's got this reputation as a top saltwater fly angler, whereas the fly fishing crowd just know him as that guy, and they don't know that he's this kind of big artist. So he lives two lives. And yeah, we got talking. Basically, we were just a bit bored with the existing magazines and the approach of those magazines, or just many fly fishing magazines, where the usual cover shots, guy with a massive fish on the front in a hero stance. And also most of the stories take your classic hero's journey of I went here and I caught this. And it was just a little hard to relate to because in our circles, we don't talk like that. There's just a lot more humor. There's a lot more failure, which we're quite honest about. And I think failure is both part of what we celebrate with the mission, but it's also, if you're honest, I think everyone in fly fishing needs to fail a lot before they start to taste any success. So we wanted to be a little bit more real on that front. And we also sort of took a stance early on that our magazine was going to be more of a why you should than a how to, because I came, as I said, out of those mainstream men's magazines, and for the last 15 years, people were telling us that print is dead and everything's online and digital, and to a certain extent that was accurate. But in niches like fly fishing, print is still very much valued, and that's why I'm covering a lot of things here. But in terms of the actual content of the magazine, the how-to stuff we keep for the website. So there are lots of step-by-step fly tying things and more kind of instructional blogs and articles, but the magazine itself is actually meant to be more inspirational and entertaining, to kind of get you going with what we call the gees of fly fishing. Gees is like Afrikaans for spirit, the vibe. So that was one of the things. And then we also wanted to make it really accessible because, again, with the mantra that print is dead, people don't want to spend however much, I don't know what it would be in dollar terms, but magazines went from around 40 Rand, they're now close to 100 Rand, or some are even double that in some of the fly fishing magazines in South Africa. And to be honest, we just like to make it free for people. So we have a print run of 4,000 copies that are available across South Africa and in Dubai and the Seychelles, available in fly fishing clubs. We put them in the airport lounges, business lounges, and all of that. They're available in some lodges, and we also send them to the local clubs, and people can pick up a copy for free. And then the digital version is also free. You just need to give us your email address to unlock it. And that's about the only currency we ask for.
Yeah, it's great. And I've never understood the print is dead, and maybe it's because I live in a different world. I don't read the newspaper. I guess I read that online, but I've got a stack of Nat Geos next to me and
exactly
3 bookshelves. So I don't.
Yeah.
I like looking at photos of adventures and reading adventure stories and doing it over and over and over again. So I don't think print is dead for me.
Yeah. And I think people are tactile. We have phones, we have social media, we have our computers, and we spend too much time on all of those things all day. So it's actually quite nice to be able to put your phone down, close your laptop, and pick up a hard copy of something, whether it's a book or a magazine, and settle into it and revisit it.
It's true. It's funny you say that. I feel like when I close the computer and open a National Geographic that I'm doing something completely different. Whereas if I'd be on their website, I'd be doing what I was doing the last 10 hours of the day,
Exactly. And you also, you may be on a website even going full screen, focused on the thing that you're reading on, but, then an email comes in or a phone call and it interrupts everything, or there's an alert on that website asking you to, do you want push notifications or something like that? And it's just intrusive. So,
yeah, true.
Look, we love print. We also love our digital magazine because it gives extra value to both readers and advertisers. But there's no reason we can't do both and also have a really busy website. So, yeah, it seems to be working so far. 7 years later, we're still here.
Well, I do want to talk about how the mission is different. But before I do, and not to sound too much like Joe Rogan, where a question comes up and then we Google it.
Elk
um,
burgers.
Jewfish now are generally called Atlantic Goliath grouper, which I'm familiar with, and the
What?
and the there's been no proof that the derivation of the name had anything offensive or derogatory related to it. So that's good. Um,
That's so interesting because I've just Googled Atlantic Goliath grouper and it's a completely different fish.
it's that's
Uh,
interesting too because we have that a lot in the U.S. where if I'm catching bonito in um,
mm,
on the West Coast, it's a different fish than the East Coast, and in the Southeast, they call what people in the Northeast would say are false albacore. They call them bonito in the Southeast. Interesting.
totally. Yeah. So I mean, the one if you Google Jewfish and Mulloway, sorry, this is a bit of an aside, but two fish geeks will dive deep. That's what we do. Um, you'll see it comes up Latin name Agristomus japonicus, which is the dusky cob that we get here, and it's Mulloway or Jewfish in I think Australia. And we also get the silver cob here,
Interesting.
which is a pretty close cousin. But on that naming thing, I mean, you obviously get Dorado, like as in the oceanic
True.
Dorado,
Yeah.
and then you get what in the English speaking world we like to call golden Dorado, but it reminds me of one of the guys I met at ICAST from Argentina, and he was like, I'm not going to do an accent, but he was like, yeah, you fucking idiots. Like,
Yeah.
he goes, you can bleep that out if you need to. He
No.
goes, Dorado means golden. So you guys are going golden, golden.
Yep. Exactly.
So anyway,
I've been trying to stop saying golden dorado, but and like start a movement, but I'm not one to start a movement. I can't. I don't have the sway. So
so says the guy with the website, but sure, sure.
yeah. Well, I said grabbing a hard copy of Nat Geo is like doing something different, but I feel that way every time I look at the digital issue of the mission, which I can't believe how frequently you all are able to put this out. Um, I started, and I do, I cringe when I'm editing the podcast and I hear myself talking too much, but a number of years ago, a group of us were starting a magazine, and we had all these great ideas of how we would be different. And more times than we wanted, you were already doing it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's great. It means that you were doing things different before we had a chance to. By the way, it still says coming soon. I think 5 or 6 or 7 years later, with the magazine. So we just need to.
What were you going to call it? Will that give it away?
Well,
Tell me
no,
later.
it's. I mean, it's. I don't think it's coming soon. It was called Fly Fishing and Travel Magazine, and um, yeah, we. I still think it's a great idea. I used to work for 2 other magazines, but it's the coming soon part. I laugh every time I see that. I have my.
Yeah.
I wouldn't hold my breath. um,
You never know.
yeah, you never know. We're not going to give up the social handles, but um, it hasn't been talked about in years. So anyway, you the mission is different, and maybe it's because of the backgrounds you described for all of you folks. Um, but it's a lot of fun. It's very clean. I have a good time reading it. It almost, as soon as you mentioned men's health and then a skateboarding background, um, it started to make more sense. I'm looking now at something I saw when I saw the new issue last week. Um, what appears to be a screenshot from CNN. Um,
Oh, right. Yeah.
and there's of should there be a space reserved for Euronymphers in the seven circles of hell? Um, fun things like that. There's always new gear that
Mhm.
um, gets my attention. I always look to see if my favorite brands are there, but then there's always other new things too that seem to be out of left field but make a lot of sense for fly anglers. Uh, and then, cocktail recommendations, funny profiles. Um, what what led to you all having so many differences between your magazine and others? Was it your own backgrounds, or a commitment to
Uh,
we're going to have a good time with this?
I think it's a combination of those things. So, you know, I don't know how to really put this, but if we just did 100% fly fishing and not the kind of peripheral fun that comes with it, because think of your average trip away with your mates. You've got to think about like what you're going to eat. Has someone packed some booze? Are we camping? Where are we staying? What are we doing? And there's all the banter going back and forth in the WhatsApp groups, and you get the guys who don't give a damn what they eat. They'll eat beans out of a tin, which is also fine. But I've written quite a few cookbooks, and I do quite a few other sort of book projects on the side. And with that, I thought, this is just one section in the magazine. We need to have a booze and beats page. We need to have a munchies page. We need to, and in terms of the tone, like you said, with whether it's even the gear reviews, we don't just take the press releases and kind of regurgitate them verbatim. We try to give them our own touch and make them applicable to our readers.
Hey,
So
easy
the
there.
idea.
Just
What do you
kidding.
mean?
That's what I do all the time.
Oh yeah, yeah, but you know what I mean. There are a lot of sites where you can go and people have literally copy pasted
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
everything
Yeah, totally.
straight from things. So, look, it takes time. That's the problem. As you know, it's a bit of a time suck. But I mean, with us, we kind of want to leave little Easter eggs throughout
Ah,
the
yeah.
magazine. So even in the terms and conditions on our masthead page, the legalese down in the bottom left hand corner, there's always something different in there that's taken from the issue. And you'll see in the sidebars and in the blurbs and everything else, we try and make it entertaining, even if you really don't give a damn about what's our latest wish list fish, river snapper or nkulu nkulu. You may never go for them, but you might be entertained or kind of freshly informed about them by the time you get through that article, or even if you just read the blurb and move on. So yeah, we just try to have fun with it. This is not deadly serious, which I think is a problem, or not a problem, but it's a thing in fly fishing. People take themselves very seriously,
Yeah.
and it's like, guys, it's fly fishing. It's a niche within a niche, and can we all just relax and have a good time?
Well,
So that's kind of our mindset.
yeah, it's funny um when you mentioned the seriousness. When I started the Venturing Angler, I was reading a lot of surfing magazines at the time because I thought
Hmm.
I was going to be able to pull that off athletically. um, and I loved how not serious the surfing magazines were. And so, like with the questions and answers, there were questions about like, you know, music and stuff like that. So I put music into my interview questions, but a lot of people don't even want to answer that question. They want to be too serious. They're too nervous about perception or something. I don't know what it is. And, as I browse through the new issue, you've got the booze and beats section, and one of your contributors, Peter Coetzee, I've seen his name a million times, but
Uh,
never pronounced it.
yeah, could see it. Peter
Okay.
could see it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. For one of his songs, he put "Crash Test Dummies." Sorry, I
No,
want to say
exactly.
there's
Uh,
four. It's.
exactly. And if you look just above his song selection, Leonard Fleming put Baby Shark in there
Oh, I
because
didn't even notice that. Wow.
so look, it's actually a cracking playlist, but somewhere in between, you're going to get Baby Shark, and you're going to go, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
But you'll get the
Yeah.
laugh, and you'll keep going.
Because you're gonna hear it in your head all day long if you have a 2-year-old like I do. Um,
Yeah,
and it's funny.
and you,
I just even recently I said to my wife, I was like, that song, She was like, "What are you talking about?" And so to see it in print just makes me laugh.
Yeah, and you got to sing it.
Yeah, that's true. All the stories that the singer's going through of all the people he knew
Yeah,
are pretty funny. And then you get the same personalities coming out in your interviews, and so you guys have really pulled off something fun. Um,
thank you. Yeah.
with great images, interesting figures. Now, when did it start evolving, or did it not evolve? Because um, I remember thinking years and years ago. Speaking of niche within a niche, this would be a niche within a niche within a niche. It was originally Africa focused, um, but now there's
It,
some evolution, or the evolution happened right away. How did that? How did it become a bit more
uh,
global?
um, I feel like from the beginning we actually even had a percentage that we threw around that we wanted to be Africa focused, but so wanted to make sure that about 70% of our stories per issue were from the African continent. But we were never going to be close to stories from elsewhere. Um, because look, I grew up reading, like trout and salmon magazines from either the UK or the US or Canada. You used to get them at the discount bookstores for absolutely nothing, and as a result, I grew up dreaming of Alaska or Kamchatka or some really sort of bland looking reservoirs in the UK. And what I realized when we were starting to put this together is that fly fishermen might be incredibly happy with the local fishing that they've got, but it doesn't mean that they don't dream of going to other places. It's like window shopping. So I'm not saying that your average guy in the US Midwest is definitely going to come to Africa for tigerfish or Nile perch or yellowfish, but some will. Some either have the funds or the inclination to go on an adventure like that, and others are quite happy just to kind of dream about it, just like I still think about Kamchatka. So yeah, we just want to portray Africa in a good light. There's so many amazing destinations and species here that we think more people should know about. And at the same time, there's some fantastic personalities that we try to show in the magazine too. But it doesn't mean that we won't feature other things. Like I think we got one of the last interviews with Lefty Cray.
Oh wow!
Our editor at large, Conrad Burtis, was on a kind of, I'm sure there's a proper word for it, like an artistic secondment in New York City, one of those residency things. And he popped down and had a fantastic interview with Lefty. We've done stuff, as you know, on Oliver White, on Tim Rajeff, who actually came and stayed with me in the Cape. So you name it, we're open to cool ideas and cool people. But yeah, we do like to put South Africa and Africa forward as much as we can.
It's funny how, and I'm guilty of this. Not everybody is, but a lot of people are, I'm sure. My knowledge of fly fishing in Africa is whatever U.S. media is putting in front of me, historically. So, tigerfish, Seychelles, right? Um,
Yeah,
and then it's really through the mission that I've seen a lot more. Obviously it's an enormous continent with a lot of countries, but there's an enormous amount of diversity in the fishing there,
yeah.
and so it's almost like it's a destination magazine within a destination niche and
Yeah,
sport niche.
and totally. And I think it's also relatively untapped from a fly fishing perspective. What made me laugh a few years back, there was that. Is it the GeoBass crowd? They had that series was it on Discovery?
Yeah.
Going to kind of destinations all over the world, fly fishing, and it was all like whether it was the Amazon jungle or somewhere else. And at one stage, they were like going to, tiger fishing on the Zambezi, and the blurb for the video was all about uncharted rivers. And it's like, no, guys, this is an established fishery. You know, there are guides, there are lodges. There's nothing uncharted here. You're tourists. You're not Stanley or Livingston. This is really, I mean, it's still wild. There are hippos and elephants and big crocs and things like that, but it really is not uncharted. So it was about the framing of it. But I guess what I'm trying to say is there are parts further afield, up into places like Gabon. We featured a great story about the quiet part of Nigeria, which is at least 3 states away from where all the hectic stuff has been going on. There's incredible fishing up in northern Zambia, Tanzania. Guys have been working on fisheries in lots of different countries. And I think, you can go, oh yes, Africa tigerfish, but there's several species of tigerfish. Same with yellowfish. Just in South Africa, we've got the largemouth and the smallmouth, which are the best known ones. Closer to Cape Town, where I am, there's a kind of more almost sought after and rare species called the Clan William yellowfish. And then, there are about 15 other ones that I've even heard about, and probably more that haven't even been classified. So, if you give it the same lens that, say, South America got, and if we think about golden goldens, those Dorado, people have options there. They can go to Argentina, they can go to Bolivia, they can go for peacock bass and things like that or arapaima in Brazil. And I think Africa needs to get that kind of framing, that there are many options and a lot of species diversity. And if you want some proper adventure, whether it's meet a long Nile perch, or if you want to go to the Seychelles and have the fishing of a lifetime on Cosmelito or Providence, or even if you want, and not all of this has to cost, so South Africa itself, other than getting here with your flights, the American dollar goes a hell of a long way here. You can get the most incredible trip along the Orange River, like a week-long drift with your camping and your food included for very, very reasonable rates. And, you're on the border between Namibia and South Africa, basically drifting through the deserts and catching these massive largemouth yellowfish and plenty of really solid smallmouth yellowfish. And it'll be the trip of a lifetime. I can guarantee that. Actually, no, I can't guarantee it. I will not be held legally responsible.
That's funny.
I know you're libelous crowd. So,
oh yeah,
but yeah, there's a lot going on here, and I guess that's part of what we feel is our responsibility, is to tell these stories. In this latest issue, for example, we've got tarpon in Angola. So Gabon's been covered quite a bit, and this Angola fishery is not new. People knew about it before, but very few people have bothered to go and fly fish for them. And this Angola fishery, there are bigger fish there. You'll see in the story, they're not the most massive tarpon, but there are huge tarpon in Gabon. And it's a very different scene to the Florida fishing off skiff scene. It's more and that's part of the challenge, is kind of fishing into the river mouths in low light conditions on foot. It's challenging, and I think that's part of the appeal.
Yeah, I often see familiar species presented in different ways with you all, and also just seeing your perspectives on locations that I am familiar with. I mean, I think Alaska's in the new issue, and it's not unusual that there are U.S. destinations. Is there Alaska in the new issue?
Yeah.
No.
It is written by a guy called Brent Flack-Davison, who is South African. He's actually from my hometown, Cape Town, but he's lived in New York City for the last, I don't know, decade and a half, I think. He married an American girl. And he and his buddies, actually, one of them is Joe Gertson, who makes those amazing fly fishing lanyards. He's based out of Missoula, and they have a regular trip. I don't know if it's always Alaska, but this was an Alaska trip where they had a whale of a time with sheefish. Um, so yeah, and to your point, I wrote about fishing in Montana, and it was I got quite a lot of feedback from Americans on that story about how interesting it was for them to see their country as a foreign destination. To kind of see it through the eyes of an English speaker like myself, but as in this is the foreign country, which is just a different perspective.
Yeah, I have an article in a magazine right now about jacks, and it's
Mm.
how a guy from South Africa had his mind blown by jacks. And the funny thing about that is it's really hard to get people in the US interested in jacks. And his response was, how is this possible? These fish are amazing. Um, and
Yeah,
so it's
but
nice, yeah, to see that
isn't
contrast.
that like that's the basic premise for the R.A. Biadi Yako Lucas
Yeah, that's
Jack's film on the IF4? We just watched that.
yeah, same
Um,
people, same story. I didn't know if you guys were like enemies or something, so I didn't want
no, 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 no.
to.
We get on very well with Yako. I haven't met RA yet, but I mean, we can play pool and figure out if we're going to be frenemies or
Our,
enemies or whatever. But
no, I was naming a different magazine, and then then I'm like, maybe I shouldn't name
oh no,
everything.
no, oh no,
Um,
no, 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 no.
but he,
And
yeah,
we
it was the companion article to the film Jax, yeah, where Yako, you know, I we all first sort of knew Yako from fly fishing for GTs in the Seychelles. Well, folks over there may have known
mm,
him sooner, and so when he came over
mm.
here and was like, "Oh my gosh," with his GT background, for him to come to Texas and say that jacks were awesome, all of us were like, "Huh." Like we're all saving for $20,000 to go to the Seychelles, and you're telling us that there's something almost as badass in coastal Texas.
I mean, the guy's got a point. Jacks are
Yes,
fantastic,
yes,
and if you don't have to spend that much money and sell a kidney, why not?
yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's not to say don't go to the Seychelles one day, but I mean, I would practice on jacks and actually probably forget about
Well,
other stuff because I'd be having so much fun.
I could probably get down to Rockport, Texas for $400. So it's
Exactly.
yeah, and then maybe if GTs are my bucket list species, I could at least get some reps in with jacks. Um, but
Exactly.
they look alike, they behave alike, they are in the same family. So
Yeah.
it's yeah,
Probably just a couple of thousand years of evolution apart, but they you know what? If you put a saucy jack and a big jeet in the same pool, they'd probably have kids one day.
yeah, and it's funny too. I, I think maybe the last time I was at ICAST, I don't know, one of those times, I went to an event, maybe a film event, I don't know what it was, and the guy next to me was like, why aren't you all obsessed with carp?
Mm,
Carp are the greatest fish in the world. We're all obsessed with carp all over the world. It brings in this much revenue to that segment of the industry. He just didn't understand
yeah.
why we weren't as carp focused as others, and
But that seems to be changing in the States.
it
I
is, yeah.
mean, I see, is it Beaver Lake in Michigan? Like you guys have those
Oh
crazy
yeah,
carp that chase down streamer patterns, whereas around here we've got fantastic carp, but it's you're trying to convince it to take a dragonfly or a squirmy wormy or a Spider-Man or something like that. It's very technical here. And sometimes, let's be honest, we all like throwing a streamer at an aggressive fish.
Beaver Island. Yeah, the other day I was just 2 weeks ago maybe I was texting Rich Hahn from Squala, and then I started
Oh yeah, X
texting.
Sims.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, then I started texting Cameron Mortensen from the Fiberglass Manifesto. And
He does Beaver Island a lot.
yes, actually, I texted Rich, and then Cameron texted me. It turns out they were together fishing for I think for carp at Beaver Island. So um,
Mm,
it's hard to I mean it's not hard to get to like Seychelles, but it's it requires a little bit of travel and
yeah,
I
a
think
lot of money.
yeah, and it's carp. So yeah, carp are.
Yeah.
I saw an
But
article.
you see that.
Maybe
Sorry to interrupt. This is what I'm talking about though. Like, I seriously have Beaver Island, Michigan, as like a place I want to fish one day.
wow.
I want to go. I want to go there for carp. And Conrad, our artist and editor at Lodge, we talk all the time about doing a striper trip, trying to do a couple of weeks going for stripers on the flats up in, I don't know, is it like New York, Maine, that kind of area, and then to go from there and do a Baja rooster trip on the
Oh,
beaches there,
cool.
like a kind of combo thing. And that's what I'm talking about. It's like, it's not that we don't love what's on our continent and get a lot of satisfaction here, but it's this window shopping thing of wanting to experience what other anglers all over the world have. So I think it works both ways. I think there are a lot more Americans and Canadians and Europeans who are kind of looking at Africa and going, you know what, I never thought of that before, but now that's properly coming onto my bucket list.
I think you have a lot to do with that. Um, what are the
I'm
goals?
blushing here, Tim.
What goals do you have when you approach each issue? It, it's it's just such a unique magazine, and there's so much that's offered. It's almost like I'm a big fan of Moldy Chum, the website.
Brian, they're
Yeah,
fantastic.
I always have been. Like every day, it starts with coffee and Moldy Chum, and um, one of the reasons I love Moldy Chum so much is I feel like I'm going to like I can't remember the right word for it. Um, I just saw something funny online that if you can't think of a word, you should say, I can't think of the English word for it. And then people will think that I'm like bilingual. Then I don't sound as dumb, but flea market. Yeah. It sounds like I feel like I'm going to a flea market with Moldy Chomp where like, I don't know what I'm going to
Yeah.
get. I might get, you know, something having to do with, some 70s band or something like really obscure in fishing. Um,
Yeah.
the mission has a similar characteristic in which it almost is like a flea market, at least at the beginning of the magazine or the first half. How do you approach each issue so that this character comes out?
Um, uh, I'm trying to think of the right answer here because I wish I could tell you that we are, super structured in it. I think we've just got editorial instincts of what does and doesn't work. But there's probably a kind of core understanding that we're omnivorous in our tastes. So I would like, I don't believe you can please everyone all the time, but I'd like any fly angler to be able to pick up or open the mission and go and find something of interest in there. So even on this most recent one, the adrenaline junkies, the whole kind of climbing through caves on a coastal cliff,
Yeah.
going for weird small saltwater species. It'll appeal to a few people. A lot of others will just be like, "Whoa, that's absolutely crazy." Probably not for me. But elsewhere in the issue, if you're a chart guy, you're probably looking at that Alaska story, going, "I could really do that," even though it's kind of focused on sheefish. There's something in it for you. So with all our issues, we try and have a mix, bit of freshwater, bit of salts, and like I said earlier, we try to have those lifestyle elements. We get a lot of people who don't fly fish who say that they read the mission just because they actually find it interesting no matter what.
Huh.
So yeah, we just try to make it an entertaining read, with fly fishing as its true north, and it should kind of make you want to dive deeper into the archive to see what else we've done, see what else is happening on the website, check out our videos, etc., etc. So yeah, I think omnivorous is probably the best way to sum up how we approach each issue. We would never do something that's fully focused on charts or fully focused on salts. We want a range of things for readers.
And you also brought feathers and fluoro into the mix.
Yes. I mean, you know, Conrad was already a member of Feathers and Fluoro. Feathers and Fluoro, let's be very clear, they were the OG blog on this side of the pond. You know, Fred Davis, Peter Kutsia, then Leonard Fleming, Jazz Huschke, Ewan Nordier, Andre van Wyk, Platten Tricocious, and JD Philmalter. And I probably have forgotten someone else, so I'll get a rude WhatsApp later. But all of these guys come from kind of different angling backgrounds, and they were running a fantastic blog. And because Conrad was involved in the founding of the mission and was already on Feathers, I kind of looked across and I said to them, you know, guys, we're swimming in the same direction. We're basically doing the same thing, but we are essentially media professionals, and we are going to go for this thing as a business. So if you're keen, we'll handle everything else. You guys just do what you do, and we'll try and facilitate fishing or whatever else for you. So they were on board, and they've formed the core of our contributors over the years. It's been fantastic.
I was a fan of that site years ago, and it's cool to see that they are part of the mission. For you,
Yeah.
for you as an angler, I know that you've been able to travel a bit. Where are some of the places that you've fished and traveled to for fishing?
Uh, there are probably three standouts. I had an incredible trip a couple of years back to Jurassic in Patagonia, Jurassic Lake Lodge. And, you know, everyone warned me that it was just going to blow my mind, and it did. Especially, I enjoyed fishing the lake itself. In fact, the first fish I saw there, I thought was a log. It was so big. And actually, I have a habit of doing that. The first time I went to Gabon, I saw what looked like a salmon, not a salmon, a seal in the surf. I was like, oh look, they got seals. No, it was a tarpon.
Wow.
So you know, yeah, it's just I need to kind of teach my eyes to believe everything is a fish first. Anyway, Jurassic was just incredible. Uh, just the fact that you break. I'm not a record keeper, but you know, I easily crushed any record trout I'd ever caught in the first few casts, and it kept going like that. And we tried, you know, microscopic flies. We tried huge streamers that I even had some from Kelly Gallup. We tried mousing with fiberglass Thomas Lotic rods, which was a lot of fun. And yeah, it's just one of those trips that's kind of burnt into my brain about just how much fun it was. There's actually we've got a cool video on that. And then I love Gabon. I've been back a couple of times. I've been absolutely destroyed by tarpon on the beaches there. I'm yet to land a tarpon off the beach there, but I've caught plenty of jacks and those giant African threadfin and snapper, which are a hell of a lot of fun. So I've got unfinished business in Gabon. And then most recently, just before my what are now 8-month-old twins were born, I got my kind of green light from my wife to go to Tanzania while she was heavily pregnant, and I went deep into the Selous. Now, I mean, if I don't know how kind of familiar your American listenership is with the Selous Game Reserve, but it's one of the great game reserves in the world. It's, you know, easily Yellowstone's equivalent. It's a huge reserve in southern, it basically takes up the southern part of Tanzania, or a large part of it. And I went to a place called Majestic Rivers, where a whole bunch of rivers basically kind of combine. And it's quite a different tigerfish fishery, because if you want to, you can do a lot of the fishing on foot. And they've got really big tigers there. They've got these beautiful barb species, the Vundu catfish, which get very big, and the Bagrid catfish, which is this kind of strange pink-looking color. And yeah, it was just a really special trip to be in that nature reserve, catching those fish. And um, as you'll read in the story, I think it was issue 36 or 37. I used to live in Tanzania working on a newspaper there, so I had unfinished business. My old housemate from when I lived in Dar es Salaam was instrumental in opening up that Tanzanian tigerfish scene, and that happened about 2 months after I left the country. So it was one of those sliding doors moments where I was like, if I had just been here a little bit longer, I would have been here at the beginning. So this was a chance to revisit the place and scratch an itch that had been there for a long time.
That's great. When you are traveling or looking at trips, you know, what is it that you want most out of a trip? Um, I love asking this question because there's always a variety of answers. You know, for some it's a trophy fish. For others, it's, you know, culture. What is it for you?
That's a fantastic question. I should really steal that actually. I think when I was younger, I I generally, when I got to travel, it was always, or it would always be on a massive budget, and I would try to go for as long as possible. And because I was broke most of the time, it would mean you really kind of get to know the country because you're traveling in local transport and talking to people a lot more as you just try and make a plan to do the things that you want to do. And now I have less time, which is just the natural progression for all of us. So whenever I can, places that give me a kind of hint of that younger me, where I can actually engage with the country a bit deeper, whether it's the wildlife, the food, or anything like that. That's really important to me. I'm obviously there for the fish, and that is obviously the paramount goal. Is whichever the main species is, or if there's a bouquet of them, I'm all in. And I'm also one of those guys who, I'm not really going to have a nap in the afternoon, even if everyone else is, because I see the clock ticking, and until I've caught a couple of fish that make me happy. I wouldn't say I don't relax. I do relax because I'm in a new place and it's all amazing and fresh. But I'm kind of driven to like make the most of it. Again, it comes back to time. So yeah, I try to get as much interesting stuff from the country or the area or region I'm going to, as well as ticking that fishing box.
Do you have any destinations on your wish list?
Oh, absolutely. God, I mean, how long do you have, Tim? High on my list, I would really like to do Bolivia for the golden Dorado. I've had a kind of open-ended invite there, and it's just going to be a case of you know time and budget and making it happen. So I'm 42 now. I think I've still got some time. I also would like to go to New Zealand. I've got family there. In fact, the only other person on the planet who has my exact name, my uncle lives there.
Oh,
And we recently actually did a profile on a South African New Zealand guide, who guides people for yellowtail or kingfish on the flats, up in Tauranga on the North Island. But I would like to do that. I'd like to do South Island. I'd like to take as much time as possible. And my in-laws live in Australia, so I've got big plans to kind of go over. And again, it'll depend on what size my daughters are and what they can do, or
right.
where if I need to escape or if we all go together. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But Australia looks incredible. Whether it's Exmouth with John O'Shale's or up in the sort of Cape York, Waipa area, And then, look, I mean, like I said, how long do you have? There are parts of Italy that really look amazing with marble trouts and, browns in those sort of alpine rivers. I'm very interested in coming back to the US. I'd like to fish for redfish. That's a big target species for me. I'd love to go to the Seychelles and do all of that. I've also had some invites there, just never managed to sort my act out. You name it, man. Like peacock bass, I want to do that. I still want to go to Kamchatka one day, if and when the Russians stop doing what they're doing. So yeah. Again, it comes back to being omnivorous. I'm the kind of person who's quite happy fishing for a trout the size of my finger. I could go for those Japanese cherry trout quite happily, and then go for tarpon the next day. I'm not too fussed.
That's a pretty exciting wish list, and I have a feeling you're going to be able to check off a lot of those. And when you make it to Montana again, let's definitely float the Yellowstone River.
Oh, man, I don't know how you live in Livingston and actually do anything other than fish. I fished a couple of the rivers in there, and it just blew my mind how beautiful it is. And also, what was the weirdest thing was in South Africa. We're quite familiar with the bush, but we're the idea is that you're quiet in the bush, and everyone throughout Montana, obviously because we're foreigners, we got like lots of warnings that we needed to make a lot of noise because of because of bears. I mean, we'd gone through Ennis, and there was a story of some guys who'd gone up. I don't know, was it called Bear Creek or something like that? And they got half scalped and came into town and got patched up, and then went back up there. So my wife and I were not petrified. So we were just going like, we were told to go yo bear, and we were having like the whitest yo bear rap battle up in this pine forest, and it just felt so weird to be noisy in nature. And I mean, we were probably overly paranoid, but fishing in a beautiful stream in Yellowstone, going yo bear. It was a new experience, put it that way.
It's funny. Last night I had to text my wife that a big bull moose, was spotted at the park where we take our daughter. So look out for moose. And
are moose really going to come for you, or do you have to do something to piss them off, or is just being around them?
Moose are scary. They're unpredictable and big, and they'll charge you. So moose are one to keep an eye out for.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the equivalent of a buffalo around here. People just think it's a cow, but it's
right.
I think they kill as many, or they're one of the most dangerous animals.
I'd feel like I'd have more of a game plan around a bear than a moose. Yeah.
So. Yeah. Well, you got your spray. What happens if you spray a moose with bear spray? Have you ever done that?
I haven't, but we can. If it happens, we'll talk about it.
We'll test it out.
Podcast.
And more importantly, Tim, who's going to win between a buffalo and an elk?
Oh,
riddle me that.
That's a tough one.
Now we're talking. Huh?
I mean, it's got to be a bull elk. Because of the horns, the antlers. Oh boy!
Look, don't think too hard, because I don't think you can give a definitive answer. But I'll let you stew on that. Well, we can start googling weights and ill temperament.
Well, my neighbor behind us works for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and she is about to get a text from me. It's 7:50 in the morning, and I might have a sense of things soon, but maybe it'll stump her too.
Cool. Let me know.
Well, it's great sorry.
No, I was just saying the invite stands on this side as well.
Oh, great. Thanks.
You really, really, really need to try and get over here. Like I said, the dollar goes a long way once you've got your flights. and you can have some incredible fishing, bring the family. There's lots to see. It's just, again, it'll be, how much time can you take?
Sounds good to me. I love it. Well, thanks for coming on. This has been in the works for a long time. Really enjoyed talking to you, and would love to have you on again. And
Likewise.
hopefully,
Thank you.
hopefully we'll fish together. And I can't wait for issue number 41.
Working on it as we speak, Tim.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, and be well.
Thank you. Cheers, Tim. Take care.